This episode of the Connected Design podcast is brought to you by our partners at Oasis Residential Technology Group. Oasis is a community built for high-achieving residential custom integrators. With valuable vendor partnerships, a powerful peer community, and tools and industry-leading resources available from day one, Oasis helps integrators achieve more together. Learn more about Oasis Residential Technology Group at oasisgroup.org. That's OASYS group.org. All right, we are back on the Connected Design podcast and excited today to jump into the world of custom home building in North Central Arkansas. Is that right, Mr. Berg, Mr. Jason Berg, owner of Bourg Builders?
Correct. Yes,
out
sir.
there.
You got it.
So how's business out there in North Central Arkansas?
It's pretty steady right now. We had a huge inflow of people around the COVID era. When COVID was really hot and heavy, we got super busy for a while there, and then it's really slowed down a little bit, but it's steady. A lot of us are still building houses. We do a lot of custom homes here. Don't do a lot of spec houses, but mostly customs.
Yeah.
A lot of people retiring to this area, so yeah, it's good. Business is good.
Yeah, now correct me if I'm wrong. You're not far from the Ozarks, is that right? Where you are?
We are in the Ozarks, yes, sir.
In the Ozarks, okay.
Yeah.
So now I have to ask: did the show have anything to do with a lot of the interest of people coming down there, or did it scare the other direction, scare them away?
I don't really know. That's a good question. I never really watched that show, so I guess I can't comment. But
it's one of those things. It's it's about your area. You don't want to. It's like people from Scranton probably don't like talking about The Office. It's like
right. Right.
Although a little bit different, I know. But no, well, appreciate you jumping on and diving into it with us, man. A space I'm looking forward to learning more about too. We got a lot of custom integrators, as you know, on Connected Design, and
yes.
We like to have these conversations about the cross section of our industry, and you guys are kind of sitting right there. So for those that don't know who you are, our audience, introduce yourself and kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and founder of
Yes.
Bourg Builders.
That's correct.
So founding your business. So bring us up to that.
So I'm a first generation builder. I started my company about 6 years ago. I was originally in the medical field. So, back to when I was younger, I grew up building. My parents were handy, very handy. And I like to say we were like the Bob Vila family of the area. My parents, if there was something to be done on a house, we were doing it. And so my dad was a mechanic by trade. My mom worked for the post office, but we were always building something. And so I kind of gravitated towards that at a really young age. I remember swinging a hammer when I was 4 and 5 years old. So I really fell in love with building. And, when I left my parents' house, they wanted me to pursue something in the medical field. They felt like it would be a stable career, so I did. I went into medicine. I was a paramedic for 24 years. And I was also a registered nurse for a part of that time, about 5 or 6 years of that. And I flew in helicopters. I did all the cool stuff in medicine. Yeah. And then COVID came around, and it really honestly just gave me a reason to retire. So
I don't think you're alone in that that field.
So I retired from medicine and started my company. I started in 2020. We started Bourg Builders, and I really just kind of started it to be just another option in the area. I wasn't planning on doing what I'm doing. I didn't really know where it was going to go, but I really enjoyed building. And so we started doing some small projects, and I built a house that I could sell, and then the company just kind of took off from there. And we got lots of requests to build custom homes, and so I had personally built my own house in town here, and I actually did a blog when I built my house, and so I put a lot of content out there just for what I was doing, my own little thing. And I guess it got noticed. And so when I started building houses, people kind of knew that I could do that. And so I got a little lucky, to be honest. We got some beautiful homes right off the bat, and the company kind of blew up, and we just started building houses. So
that's pretty cool.
So yeah, it was we just got lucky, to be honest. But I really feel like, we're building, $500,000 homes. We're building $2 million homes. We're building like all over in that area. And so I definitely feel blessed and lucky to be on that level of building so early in my career.
Yeah.
We've got really good talent.
I have a serious question and a silly question to ask. The medical, I'm going to start with the silly one. The medical background in the building industry, how often are you finding yourself having to go back? Someone gets hurt on the job and you got to pull out your old EMT hat and go.
Honestly, it's only happened once since.
Good.
Yeah,
Good.
I'm very, I'm very safety conscious, as you can imagine.
Yeah,
so
that's a good thing.
I make sure my guys aren't doing anything crazy that would get them hurt to begin with. So like we have those conversations pretty regularly.
That's awesome.
And so I'm big on safety on my job sites. We try to mitigate as much of that as possible. I've never had any serious injuries, knock on wood. So we try to be as safe as possible, as humanly possible.
No, that's awesome. Now the serious question. So the getting into this space, having I mean, one thing to be sort of into it and just interested in it and passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
How do you teach? Like, was it like a hobby that turned into a career? Like, explain how you learn or teach yourself in this space and become knowledgeable enough to be as successful as you've been in such a short period of time.
Sure. So growing up, I got a lot of hands-on experience building with my dad, working with wood. We did a lot of woodworking, and so we built a lot of different projects. We did everything from decks to barns to, nothing. We never did a house, but we always did things with wood. And so I was always just kind of handy that way. He really got me into it at an early age. And then as I grew up, I started doing my own projects outside of my family. So I got into college, I bought a house, I renovated that house. That was my first real experience doing it all by myself. So, I demoed it, did all the I built it back, I did it all myself. And that was really kind of before YouTube was a thing. So a lot of that for me was some trial and error. I didn't really have some of that experience, so I had to learn. And I always thought it'd be better to learn on my own stuff than to do it for somebody else. So it was a little bit of trial and error in the beginning. And so the other thing I did when I was a kid is I used to watch a lot of home improvement shows on TV, which kind of seems... Mm-hmm. It seems far-fetched today because it's not, but like back when I was younger.
University is today.
Yeah,
right?
I watched Home Time. I watched Yankee Workshop. I watched This Old House. I watched these shows and they explained how they do these things. And so I think since I was so interested in that at the time, I just retained a lot of that information and was able to take that with me, when I started doing it on my own.
Yeah, I'm glad home improvement was not on that list because I feel like people probably learned a lot of what not to do from Tim Allen.
I love that. I actually own all of those theories.
Oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic.
I love it. It was my favorite show growing up.
That's so good. That's awesome.
But yeah, so I think a lot for me, it was, I read a lot as a kid. My parents owned a collection of magazines, a collection of building magazines when I was a kid. And so I read a lot of that, and I really just kind of self-taught myself the things that my parents couldn't teach me.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And I know, too, something to bring up is that just looking at your site, I know you got a couple of association memberships that I know you're a part of, namely for those, one that obviously is going to stand out to a lot of people, NAHB, National Association of Home Builders. Correct. Talk about the role. I assume a lot of education through them for you guys and kind of what you're doing.
Yes. So they offer a lot of different courses and classwork that we can take to, kind of keep up on what's coming up, the newest trends. I became a fan of building science when I built my personal home. And so actually the government has a great website that lays out a lot of building science that they've done over the years. For example, advanced framing. We don't do a lot of advanced framing here. It's a framing technique it takes a lot of thought and planning, but that's a technique that's used in other parts of the country. And I've always been interested in doing that. I haven't really been able to implement it just yet, but it's definitely something I'm looking at doing. But yeah, National Home Builders Association it's integral to what we do. There's a lot of resources there, and being a member is kind of a big part of our community. And we have a local chapter here where there's a lot of us builders and subcontractors that are part of the local Home Builders Association as well. So it gives us we meet once a month, and we have guest speakers that come in and talk about their trade, or what they're bringing new to building, and so it's a kind of a way for keeping us networking too.
Yeah. Now, do you go to the national shows and stuff like that as well?
So I have plans to. I haven't been able to yet. I wanted to go to the Vegas one a couple years ago, and then they had it in Orlando this year, and we were invited to go to Orlando, but I just had some major projects going on that I couldn't really leave to attend. But yeah, so we are definitely planning to attend. That's like on my bucket list, really, of shows to attend. So
heck yeah,
yeah, it's definitely awesome on the list.
Well, I know people here too. So I want to ask about kind of the types of projects you work on. You mentioned obviously custom homes being a big portion of it.
Correct.
A big difference I know between custom and spec. Custom, you kind of get that blank slate, right? You get to work with. I don't want to steal the thunder. I want to kind of let you explain what it's like to work on a custom home and have that sort of blank blueprint that you can build off of and really be creative with what you do.
Yeah. So on the custom side, it's very fluid in a lot of ways. So, once we develop a plan with an architect or a draftsman and the client, we kind of, hash out what they really want the house to look like. There's a lot of intricacies that we can develop in that stage of building that lets us take the house to another level. In a spec house, you're building something, you're on a really tight budget, you're building it to sell it, so you can't really indulge in some of that creativity like you can in a custom. And so in custom homes, we really try to incorporate one-off things. We want their custom house to be very unique and true to what they want. And so in that custom world, it's a lot more fun because your creative side can come out. Your innovative side can come out. And so, and that's kind of where we get into the technology side as well with these customs. We build in budgets to really automate these houses because, for me, I want the house to work with me. I don't want to fight the house when I'm living in it. And so, when I walk in the door, I want the house to know I'm home and I want it to do certain things. And so that's kind of where the home automation side comes in. And that's a big deal for us in our customs. Just about all of our customs have some home automation in them.
Well, talk about that, because I'm glad you brought it up naturally, right? Like, it's nice to see on this platform that technology just kind of naturally comes up in this conversation, because there is a lot of, especially on the custom side, having the opportunity to sort of implement technology and these automation platforms and whatnot. So, like, how big of a role? Dive deeper into that. Like, how big of a role does tech play in what you do, and sort of a follow up to that? How are you staying sort of ahead or understanding of what what's available out there from a tech perspective in these homes that you're working on?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, technology has been something that I've been interested in homes for a long time, long before technology had the capability to do what I was already envisioning it to do. So just to kind of preface that, back in the late 90s or mid 90s, the show Home Time that I used to watch, they actually built a smart home. They put a computer in that house and it would control lighting and it would control the HVAC system, and it was very rudimentary. And it was like my first real introduction into technology in houses. And so, I was a kid when that aired, and it really drove me to be like, okay, well, what can I do in my houses to incorporate this stuff? And back then I was so new to that. I didn't really know anything, so I had to kind of do my own research. And so, that technology in the house was always a marriage that I wanted to make. But to be honest with you, it's kind of expensive to do that sometimes, and so, as a kid, building my first house, obviously I didn't have a budget to do that. So, fast forward to, being in my 30s and I'm actually building my first home for my family. and I wanted to integrate technology. I knew that was a big deal. And so for me, the very first thing I wanted to do was, and it sounds so simple now, but I wanted to have my TV, all my components, everything in the house on one remote. Like that was my big goal at the time, you know? It's like DVD player, stereo, everything. I wanted on one remote. And so that was like my introduction into finding a platform that would really help me integrate all the things that I envisioned for my house, and then to try to find out what was truly capable. And so I reached out to a local company here, Brad's Entertainment, who I've got a really good relationship with, and I had already kind of done enough research to know what platform I wanted to go with, and that was Control 4. And Control 4 at the time was they did a lot of commercial stuff, but they were really kind of getting into the residential side and integrating some of their automation and home controls on the residential side. And so I found out that Brad was a local dealer for Control 4. And so I went up and talked to Chris, who's one of the integrators. He's an installer. He and I have become really good friends in this process. And so, he talked to me about Control 4 and everything that it can do. And I was like, man, this is literally what I've been looking for to integrate into my homes. And with that, he really educated me on a lot of things that Control 4 that could do that I wasn't even aware of. And it really just expanding my mind as far as, oh, well, there is something out there that can do all these things that I've always wanted to do, and I can integrate it now. Like the platform is there. And so for me, it was a kind of a marriage. It was perfect timing for that marriage for me and Chris to kind of get together and start planning how to integrate technology into the homes that we build. And it started with my own personal home. And the thing that I love about the Control 4 system is it's infinitely expandable. So you can start with something small and you could expand that across the home over time and truly build a whole home automation system that literally the house functions without you,
Right.
And so for me, that's like, it's kind of where I geek out a little bit is, I want the house to literally function when I'm not here. And Control 4 allows me to do that. And so, Chris and I have got this really good relationship now. And so when something new is coming on the market or some new technology or something's like, hey man, I ran into this, we should look at this. He really keeps me up to date on what's new and what's upcoming and how can we integrate this? How can we make it cost effective to integrate? And he keeps me mostly up to date on the component side and kind of what's the newest and what's the latest. And there are times when I'll think of an idea and I'll Google it and I'll research, how can we make this work? But he's really my source. So that relationship that we built has been, it's been incredibly important for me to kind of get the technology that I'm dreaming about actually in person and in a home. So that relationship's been great.
That's awesome. And I'm going to ask what probably seems like a really simple question, but that relationship and developing that, did you know what an integrator was before you started looking for it? Like, I want to ask how did you end up actually finding Brad's Home Entertainment, and like what was that process like for you and all that?
So, at the time I was looking for, like I said, I was looking for a system that would just run everything on one remote, and so for me, I had looked at Lutron, I had looked at, there's several different others out there that I had kind of gone through. And, I got on some forums, I had read some articles, and it all kind of led me back to Control 4. Control 4 seemed to be the platform that I had been dreaming of. Like if I was going to create a platform, that was the platform I would have created,
So really, it's like the technology backed you into the relationship?
Yes. So once I found the platform that I really wanted to use, that led me to Brad's, which, they just what's the chances of there being a Control 4 dealership in little old Mountain Home,
Right.
And so I found the technology, then I found the company that can install the technology. And that kind of formed our relationship. Was, my love of this specific technology, and they had that technology. And so,
Yeah.
and they knew how to integrate it and knew all the ins and outs of it. They had been doing it long before I even knew it was a thing. And so, that's kind of how we developed that, was just me searching a platform and then finding the integrator. And they've been
Yeah.
phenomenal. It's just been honestly the best relationship I could ever imagine for technology.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So awesome to hear for sure. And kind of like I said, the reason why a platform like Connected Design, I love highlighting these types of partnerships. How important, easy to ask this, but like to get you to dive into it a little more. I know you mentioned that you're in touch with them on a regular basis for projects, but
Yep.
like a big point of conversation that happens all the time in this space, I know, is technology integrators wanting to get involved earlier in projects and
Yep.
things like that. So because you mentioned the budgets and things, right? Because
Yes.
these things can get pricey. So
They can,
bringing them
yeah.
in late kind of can put them at a disadvantage. So to get that, like, how early do you involve them in sort of the work that you do, and whether it's a custom home or whatever the project might be?
Yeah, so the way I kind of do it is, every house that we build, I build a budget in the original estimate for infrastructure. And so, my original estimate includes infrastructure for internet. We run cat everywhere. Any cabling, security camera, all that stuff is kind of integrated into my original budget. So even if the homeowner decides not to do it, the infrastructure is there. And so, Chris and I will typically get together around the electrical phase in the rough end side. We'll actually sit with the client at that point in time and say, hey, this is what we have built into the home. Like, how much of this do you want to access? And so then we can kind of put together a plan for the client as far as, a camera system, if they want to do Control4, if they want to integrate music into their house, if they want door locks, if they want HVAC control, all of those systems start to come online once we sit with Chris in that kind of that mechanical stage of the house.
Yeah. What are those conversations like with the client? Because I imagine they can, some it may go over their heads like, man, this is too much tech for me to handle. Others, it's like probably like you were, kind of researching Control4 for yourself, is like they geek out over it. But
Yeah.
what can those conversations be like?
So, original like the very first conversation is definitely overwhelming because there's so much information. Let me back that up. I would say it could be overwhelming, but I really do try to. I piece it together in our original conversations I basically give them all of the options and say, hey, these are the things that we can do. We don't have to do them all. We can do them a little bit here, a little bit there. We can add to the system as you need, but this is basically what we can do. Now, let's talk about budget, and let's talk about, like, if you want to do this, what would you be willing to spend? And then once we know that number, then we can build in the systems that are most important to them first. So most of the time it's going to be a camera system. And for us, a lot of the houses we build are second homes or lake homes. So we always try to integrate leak detection, whole home water shutoffs, that kind of stuff. So, those are our big priorities in the beginning, is security and prevention of disasters, and so that's kind of our first conversation. And if we can get them on board with that, then that usually leads to door locks, garage doors, lighting, all the things, and that system gets built out from there. So, yeah, the initial conversations are more information, and then budget, like, what are you willing to spend? And then let's build off of that budget and see how much of this can we include in that budget.
Yeah. Hey, now, I know as technology advances and continues to innovate, I know it can feel like it gets more complicated and complex and whatnot. But as from when you started the company to today, does it feel like technology conversations have gotten easier with clients, or
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think I've become a better salesman at it, to be honest with you, because I'm intimately familiar with the product now. I've got this product all over my own home. And so, I can literally show clients all the things that are possible. which really helps me explain the product, number one, but it helps me sell the product too.
Yeah.
And so I would say it's gotten easier for me just because I live in that system. I use the system every day. So my familiarity with it is, 1,000 times better than it was when I first started.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. As far as like others, because obviously you work with architects, I'm sure designers are part of this too.
Yes.
What sense do you get from them on their understanding of technology? Like, is there any hurdles you have to get through with them, or what are those conversations like?
Most of them, honestly, the only real challenge that I find we have, and it's not even on the architect side, they're mostly looking at structure and, the integration into technology usually comes after them. After we've got the house designed and we've got a structure, the architect really doesn't get too involved in that side. It's mostly on the design side, making sure that we're not designing a system that's going to be, awful to look at. When we're
Right.
designing spaces to hide equipment, finding closet space. And honestly, a lot of time that comes in after the architect because it's hard to explain to the homeowner kind of what this space needs to be until it's actually there. And so, we usually get the house framed. And then, in the back of my mind, while we're framing, I'm looking at spaces that we can capture to hold equipment, that we can tuck away somewhere where, that equipment is hidden but accessible. It's in the climate controlled space, but it's not seen. And so, that space becomes very important to me as the general contractor because I have to integrate that space, but I have to keep it hidden too. And so I've gotten pretty good at, in the framing stage, finding those spaces and presenting them to the homeowners as we're walking through the house. I'm like, hey, I want to take this space over here for all of your equipment, because at that point we've already had the initial conversation about Control4. I usually have, a small budget planned. And then when we get to that electrical side, now we're talking like, okay, how much of this do you want to integrate? Like where are we at with this? And so, yeah, so those spaces can be sometimes difficult to create if we filled the entire space in the house, and
Right.
so, most of the houses it's kind of on the back end kind of space. And so that's kind of where it gets a little challenging. I don't typically address that space up front, which maybe something I need to start doing. But I haven't had to do that yet. So I think it's
Right.
kind of one of those things until I have to do that. Until I'm
No, it
forced
makes
to do
sense.
it, I'm gonna. It's working right now.
Well,
So
and I know too. Like obviously, going through some of these homes and seeing, I've seen homes. There's one in particular that stands out in Las Vegas that I visited. That like, it was a ridiculous home for one, but it had like rack rooms that were
sure,
like multiple throughout the house because it was like that type of system that was
absolutely,
installed.
yeah,
Like I know they can get very involved, but
yes,
and those like it's tough to make a room with all of the racks look sexy,
right,
but like at the
appealing,
same
yeah,
time,
yeah, yeah,
right? At the
yeah,
same time, like I know one of the concerns too, maybe not even a concern, it's just like one of the considerations,
hmm
or things that people that come to mind for a designer or even the homeowner, is that, when you're talking about technology, how it's going to just look blah throughout the house. And I know that as a builder, I'm sure you see that's not the case as much anymore. Like it's
correct.
not just boxes out. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so especially with Control4, the componentry for that system is, we can usually stick most of it in a 12-unit rack space. It's very compact, and so we don't need a whole lot of space to hide those components. The thing that I really like about Control4 is their Zigbee switching. So their integrated light system, the switches that we put on the wall they look like designer switches, and so and the way they light up and integrate into the regular switch box is flawless. And so, when we're talking lighting control, you can't tell other than the fact that the switch has an LED light on it, you can't tell the difference from a designer switch to a Control4 switch. The design on the switch is phenomenal. And they come in multiple colors, and you can change the faceplates out, and you can do different keypad type installations. So, so on the design side, it's very minimalistic on the inside of the house. We have touch screens on the wall in ideal locations, for the homeowner to use. Another thing I really like about Control4 is, we can put basically an iPad on the wall that can control the whole house and stick it, in a hallway by the master bedroom. So when they're coming out, they have access to the whole house. And it's also integrated on their phone. So, that platform, I think that's why I love that platform so much, is there's so many ways to access the house, not just from touching the switch. You can literally lay in bed and control your house.
Yeah.
Aesthetically, Control4 and this system that we've chosen to use, it blends seamlessly in the house, and we can make it as visible as the client wants it to be.
Yeah.
We do a lot of sound integration in the homes too. So, I'm a musician, so I love sound in homes. I've got 30 some odd speakers in my own house, and so music and sound is a big part to me. On the integration side, so new technology out there, you can put speakers behind drywall, you can literally hide everything. So I think as far as the aesthetic on the interior, it can be as minimalistic or as obnoxious as you want it to be.
Yeah, no, it depends on your level of interest in having it be, visually forward. No, I think, did I hear you mention, like, when you are talking to clients, or obviously it's difficult to explain how this stuff works. You can explain it, but it's one thing to explain it, another to experience it.
Yes.
Did I hear you say, like, you take clients through your home to show off the technology? Like, that has to be eye-opening for one if they're not familiar with it, but also like super impactful for them to be able to see the stuff in action before they decide to put it in their home.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly think it's the only way to truly give them an experience. Is to put them in a house that's already integrated. So all of my clients, my office is actually in my house. So my clients come to my house fairly often for meetings, but that serves twofold. That's a twofold purpose, because not only have I built my own house, I can show them some of the things that I can do, but I can also show them the technology behind the house that they can't see otherwise. And I know at Brad's they have some of this technology available for them to show clients, so they have blinds set up, they have cameras set up, they have the showroom, but a showroom and an actual home that's already integrated, it just takes it to another level. So I bring my clients through the house, I show them the technology, I operate the technology. They can see all the different things that I've integrated into my own house, and there's still even more that can be done from what I've got. And then at that point, they can get a really good sense of how their home can operate through that system. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I feel like we could keep going, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you both got to work, right?
I've got you for the day, like whatever.
Hell yeah! Well, in that case, no. One other question I wanted to ask, just to kind of close the loop on having that integrator partner.
Sure.
What are sort of the keys to making that real? Obviously, an interest in the tech, and you work closely together. But like, what are sort of the keys to making that relationship between the builder that you would explain to other builders out there that maybe don't have an integrator partner? Like, what would you tell them about, like, why it's important to have one, and then how to have a successful relationship with that integrator?
Yeah. So as a general contractor, there's no way we can possibly keep up with everything that's new, or every little aspect of every little thing. And as a general contractor, we have subcontractors that work with us that are experts in their field. Like take electricians, for example. I'm not a master electrician, but my subcontractor is a master electrician, and he knows everything about it. And so that's kind of how I see integrators as well, is they're they're a very important resource for me, number one. So they keep me not only up to date with what's new, but they also keep me up to date on how to integrate these systems in the house electrically on the rough end stage. Because if there's new technology that comes out where we don't have to run wire, then we won't do that, So we really do work hand in hand on, every aspect of integrating the house from the design side to the installation side. And honestly, that really boils down to me. The main thing we do is communicate, and we talk a lot. And so early on in the project, Chris and I will have conversations about the things that I think the clients are going to want, the things that I think they're going to want in the future. And then we together kind of develop, a system for the house that we can present to the homeowner. And I can always bring Chris in to explain something that maybe I'm not super intuitive about, that maybe he has a little. So like take for example, I'm building a house for an electrical engineer right now. They're way over my head on some of that stuff, and so I can bring Chris in to talk to him, and they can speak their own little language.
Yeah.
So that helps tremendously. Is that that relationship and that communication that we've developed over the last 7 years of doing this. Actually, I take that back. Me and Chris, I think our relationship started in 2015, which is when I got into Control 4. So we've been doing this 11 years now.
Wow.
So with my own personal home, and then when I built my company, integrating him into that system.
Yeah, there's definitely a trust built there.
Yeah,
over that period of time.
So I think for me, the biggest thing, especially if you're getting into this and you're wanting to start integrating your houses, is find a system that you want to use. Okay, and for me, that's Control 4. And Control 4 is not paying me to say this, but that's the system, that I fell in love with. So I found an integrator that integrated Control 4, and luckily for me, they were good people. Like they've been really like by my side through this whole thing. They're more than willing to explain stuff. They're very hands-on with me. And so that relationship kind of developed naturally, I guess. I'm a very hands-on builder. I don't build from the office. I'm very hands-on with all my projects. Sometimes I'm swinging the hammer. Sometimes I'm, managing subs. Sometimes I'm scared. It just depends on what aspect of the build, but I'm there a lot. And so, that having those integration partners that are willing to be there with you, and walk through those things is super important for me to have that relationship with them. And so, I would say to anyone that's looking for an integrator, those are the things that I would look for is, someone willing to step out there with you, someone that's going to communicate with you and just be open about, everything. Like, hey, this is the latest and greatest. This is the budgetary stuff. The cost is always a big thing, and so, having an integrator that's willing to say, hey, this is what we can do for this, and just being transparent, I think that's and that's really for all subs, but especially an integration side, because there's so much of that. And even though I'm a technology fool, I love this stuff. There's still so much that it's so rapidly evolving that I can't possibly stay on top of it all. And so I've been super fortunate and super lucky to have a great relationship with them. And, we've developed that relationship over 11 years. So
yeah, no, that's awesome to hear. And really, again, just at the heart of kind of what we're trying to highlight. So that's awesome to be able to do that. And it was a lot of fun, man, diving into this with you. A really cool conversation. Awesome to hear sort of how things are going, how you got the business together and up and going in pretty cool short period of time there. But also the technology side. It's just a lot of fun to see. And I definitely think not a one-off conversation here. So I'd love to have you back.
Oh, I'd love to.
And
Yeah,
seeing
absolutely.
how things are going, man.
I'd love to talk to you about all the things these houses can do, because that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, we'll plan on it. No, that's awesome. Well, we appreciate it. This episode of the Connected Design Podcast is brought to you by our partners at Oasis Residential Technology Group. Oasis is a community built for high-achieving residential custom integrators. With valuable vendor partnerships, a powerful peer community, and tools and industry-leading resources available from day one, Oasis helps integrators achieve more together. Learn more about Oasis Residential Technology Group at oasisgroup.org. That's OASYS group.org.